From the Great Basin to the Rockies to the four corners of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, this is KMMU Main Street Media Utah coming to you live. You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, X, and our website, kmmu.org. Please join our host, Goud Maragani, for the Goud Crowd, the only radio broadcast good enough to be monitored by Utah's State Bureau of Investigation. Take it away, Goud.
I don't feel like I'm up. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Goud Crowd. I'm your host, Goud. I will say that intro still makes me laugh because the State Bureau of Investigation part is true. Also a little bit scary if you think about it. After the last 4 years of having Americans targeted by the FBI, it kind of feels like the SBI is turning into our local version of that. A little terrifying. Okay, so first let's start with we have a busy show today, and there's actually some events that are coming up. Let me talk about those. Tonight at 6:30, there's going to be a debate between Phil Lyman and Rob Axon, both of whom are running for chair of the Utah State GOP, the Utah GOP State Party. I don't know how to say that right, but. So that'll start at 6:30. I don't know. I think that might be broadcast for some people who want to watch it. But, if you're here, you should stay here and then go see them afterwards. Wednesday, I know Phil Lyman is having a virtual town hall. I know that because I'll be hosting it. So that'll be at 11:30. You should check that out. Those have actually been really good, pretty interactive. You can ask questions. You can write questions in the comments, and he'll answer whatever questions you have. Tonight, we're actually, Mr. Producer, if you want to go ahead and put up the candidate screen, that would be great. And maybe let me say this. I think the big news for the next couple of weeks are the leadership elections for the state GOP. We're going to have... Well, I don't know if we're going to have new leadership or a continuation of the current leadership. The only guaranteed change is the treasurer, where the current treasurer, McKay Newell, is not running for re-election. And Chris Null is running unopposed, so he'll be the next treasurer. And then for the chair is competitive. We have Phil Lyman and Rob Axon running. Melanie Monastery is currently the vice chair, and she's running unopposed. And then, interestingly, we have a rematch for the secretary between Stafford Palmieri-Sievert and Olivia Dawn Horlacher-Williams. Both of them have lots of names, so they have that in common. I think that's Olivia is coming on today to talk about her candidacy for secretary, and Stafford has agreed to come on next week. So I will say I'm really interested in why there is competition for the secretary's role. When you think about it just on the surface, it seems like kind of a boring-ish position maybe, but there must be something that is making it competitive and making it so that two people actually want to be it. So maybe there's some power there that we can learn about from one or both of the candidates, and that could educate us as we try to decide who to vote for. I believe, Mr. Producer, do you have any thoughts on these leadership races? Maybe what you're looking for, and when you're going to vote on May 17th, I think is the election.
Yeah, it's. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, cool. I can hear you.
Let me drop this website, and. It's kind of an interesting race between Phil and Rob Axon. I like them both. I just like Phil more. Well, I've worked with Phil, and I was a part of his campaign for governor, and both of them are really good. I think Phil's more of a he will support. Getting rid of the HB 54 is what he'll try and do. Rob, I think, tried some of that, but he wasn't strong enough for me. Because I'm a delegate, and because I'm involved. Well, now I'm involved in the Wasatch GOP. I would like to see HB 54 go away. And I don't think Chris fought strong enough for it. Also, I'm hugely in favor of paper ballots, paper hand count, all that kind of stuff. And Rob's kind of a technologist. He's like me. He's a technology guy, but I'd like to see the technology go away. As far as the other candidates, Melanie Monastir. She was part of the GOP up here in Summit County for a while, and so she moved on to the state. She's moving up the ladder, and
Well, she's also unopposed, so
she's in.
You don't have a
She's
choice.
in. And I like Olivia because I know her mom, so. And I've actually I worked with Olivia a little bit on Phil's campaign, so and I think that may be why she's in the race, is because she wants to back Phil. I don't know for sure, but and Chris, he's unopposed. Always liked Chris, and I don't know much about Stafford, but I do know Olivia. So those are my choices.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, Stafford has been the secretary for the last 2 years. And so I've seen her work, and I'm interested. Like I said, I just find it fascinating that that's the second most competitive race, really, right? That you have two people that want to be the secretary of the state party. I think there is more to it than maybe what appears on the surface. That on the surface, I think, it's about keeping minutes and making sure they're accurate, making sure that your agendas are good, making sure that people get stuff in on time, they know about deadlines, things like that. But I feel like maybe there's more to it that the candidates will tell us about as they come on the show that might give us some insight into why is it competitive? Why do two people want to do this same job?
Well, it's interesting. I think there's, like I said, Olivia, I think, is there to help out Phil. And what happens is once the board is settled, there's a bunch of stuff that goes on. There's choices they make. They change the bylaws. They do all kinds of things. They keep things organized. And really, the secretary for us up here in Wasatch, she kept track of all of the people, and she did a lot of the communications, sending out emails and keeping track of the delegates and the phone numbers and emails and names and that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that Olivia can tell us more. And next week, you said Stafford's coming?
Yeah, I'm really excited.
I want to know more about the job myself. I do. So
they're both, just on a personal note, they're both mothers. I assume Stafford was pregnant because I think she had her baby. So you've got two young mothers. It's kind of interesting.
I do like the fact that we have young people getting involved. Okay, I mean, because I keep telling people we need to pass this baton to the next generation, and so here we are.
Yeah. I will say, I feel like actually nationwide you're seeing kind of an interesting split of baby boomers, and I don't know if you would be a baby boomer, but kind of beginning to move left, which I think is interesting. But younger people, I mean, like I'm 47, so I'm middle-aged, but these really young people moving really to the right in a lot of ways, which is really cool to see, I think, because it shows you that I think they're just awakened in a way that it took me until probably my 30s to understand really all the corruption in our system and all the problems and how we're not really living up to our Constitution at all. And I feel like now I see like 18-year-olds that are more awake than I ever was.
Well, and I think, one of the things that kind of pushed them along was the COVID, the whole pandemic thing. A lot of these young kids, they were out of school for a whole year and they didn't like it. They just didn't like it.
Yep.
So they may be a little more, the younger ones may be a little more conservative. We'll see.
Yeah, man, and I think it's a cultural thing though, because that's part of, part of my criticism in Utah is I feel like we just have a lot of this beta male energy everywhere. It's like dominated by these weak, feckless men. They dominate in the legislature. They really go after anybody that challenges them on their own side very nastily, while they let the left kind of like run a rampant and run all over them. I'll show a video later where Mike McKell talks about how the Democrat senators in our supermajority state legislature, supermajority Republican state legislature, that some of the most productive legislators are Democrats. And I heard that and I thought to myself, can you see how stupid these people are? If you are a supermajority Republican state, the leader of the House, or the president of the Senate, if he sees a good bill being run by a Democrat, he should pull that bill and give it to a Republican, and in order to keep his supermajority. But our legislature is full of these beta males who let these, and basically it's left-wing women, like run all over them. And I think they're going to head towards a bad situation because they're letting these Democrats run the good bills while they run bills that give, Ryan Smith $1 billion or Gail Miller $1 billion, or, they make our government less transparent, and that stuff is not popular.
Well, and you said the Democrats are more productive. You kind of have to define productive, but yeah, I don't get it. It's supposed to be a conservative state, and sometimes I scratch my head.
Yes. Agreed. Okay. Well, let me, I hope people find, I am hoping that people make good decisions on May 17th, that some of our interviews are helpful with, we'll have a bunch of people calling in today. So Mr. Producer, be ready. You will not be lonely. Delegates talking about what they're looking for as they head into the state convention, who they're leaning towards, what's going to seal the deal for them. This is your voice, and I'm hoping that the more calls we have in, the better. So,
well, we don't have anybody up yet, but we'll start soon. Oh, I gotta call into my phone line, so I'll let you get back to it, and the minute somebody shows up, I'll ping you. All right.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, let me, I'm going to play one of these videos because I thought this was really, so here's the thing. In my view, I think the party chair position, the state party chair, and I think this is generally an issue on the Democrat side. These have a lot of potential to help push our elected Republicans into a conservative direction, but that potential is not being utilized at all. In fact, what we seem to be having instead is that the legislature does all of this stuff, like I just said, that's not conservative, that's not really in line with the Republican. Oh, geez, you're wet. Sorry, one of my dogs just walked in. They do things that are not conservative at all, and then the party chairs defend it, right? Instead of being like, no, that's actually not in line. So making our government less transparent, for example, which has happened just about every legislative session, they pass a new law making it more difficult to get documents from the government. That's not a conservative principle, and that's not even part of our platform. And it would be good if we had leadership that pushed back on that and said, no, we don't want that. We want you to be transparent. It's the same thing with elections. We saw that in this last round where with signatures that were gathered by Governor Cox to access the state GOP's primary ballot. He had to gather 28,000 signatures. He didn't. That's a fact. He didn't. 3 audits found that he didn't. We had Michael Clare on last week, and he went into detail about how they didn't have the spare signatures that they said they had that were claimed by these audits. But our party chair, I don't think, did enough to be able to access those signatures and to verify that Governor Cox and Deidre Henderson actually got the 28,000 signatures. And so I think a better chair will make sure to protect the delegates and protect our party as these elected officials just, do things that are not in line with our platform or that really attack the kind of the structure of our party and what we are supposed to be trying to do, which is elect people to implement policies that align with our platform. But let me give you kind of an example of what I mean by this, because I've been talking about this for a while. I always have trouble playing videos on the show because you guys have all heard my computer story, so I'm not going to repeat it today, but just I have a crappy computer.
Emily is asking if there's anything constituents can do to...
Give me a second. I downloaded the video this time. Let's see if I did it right. Oh, I should say Happy Cinco de Mayo if you celebrate. When I lived in places like Texas.
So Troy Williams is the...
Okay. Here, let me show you this. This just made me, this annoyed me so much. So let's see here. Can't find it. Can't find it. Where is it? Window. Here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is Brady Brammer, and he's allegedly very conservative. Oh, okay. Just one second, Mr. Producer. I see that. Let me just share. Let me do this real quick. So he's allegedly very conservative. Here's him. This was to continuing legal education class for lawyers. Here you go.
So Troy Williams is the director of Equality Utah, and we have a great relationship. We work well together. There's a lot of mutual respect, and we're trying to find our path through.
Okay. Let me stop sharing. Okay. So I have real issues with that because Troy Williams is a left-wing loony who pushes the trans agenda onto our state. Also, Troy contacted my employer. So I'm a conservative gay guy. Troy Williams used his organization and he contacted my employer multiple times. He had one of his board members contact the CEO and got me fired from my job. And that is what an allegedly conservative Republican says. They don't have, and the problem is I actually think I'm not the only one who's been targeted by Troy. I think he's targeted other conservatives that work at companies that are business equality leaders with Equality Utah. And you hear about this where all these conservatives are afraid to speak up publicly because they're afraid to get fired from their jobs. I blame people like Brady for that. Because instead of going to Troy and being like, you know what, on issues like this, so on issues of letting men into women's locker rooms, letting girls play boys sports, letting letting some transgender woman, a man, live in the girls' dorms, you are wrong on all those issues. 90% of Utahns support us. We're not talking to you about it. There's nothing to discuss. We win, you lose. If you have a problem with it, go and win an election. And you're only going to be able to do that if you get those crazy Democrats, and the Democrats in Utah are absolutely crazy, get more of them elected. But otherwise, we have no need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. If you want to talk, I'm not meeting with you privately. Brady actually talks about it. Apparently, he meets with Troy Williams and Equality Utah privately. We're not meeting with you privately. You can come to an open session and you can testify and have all the crazy purple-haired freaks and whatnot come and do the same thing. But I don't want to talk to you. We don't need to. You didn't win. Instead, like I said earlier, we have a bunch of beta males, and you see what they do. They run around and they appease leftists as leftists push bad policy on Utah and target your children. So with that, let's go. I think we have Kay on the line. Do you want to go ahead and put her through, Mr. Producer? By the way, in that video, I don't know what Brady is taking, but talk about low energy. Man, like maybe he needs some supplements or something. Maybe he's met too many times with Troy Williams and it's hurting his energy levels. I don't know, but yeah, like get some energy, man. Okay, we're waiting for Kay, I believe. Look, my producer said Karen. Whoever is calling. And let me just say, if you have thoughts on anything, you should feel free to call in. It's 385-899-2134. If you have thoughts on our supermajority Republican legislature, if you have thoughts on the leadership races, call in. We want to hear them.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Producer, who do we?
Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Hi. So I was just calling in. I was just listening to some of what you were talking about. I'm actually just kind of off work and going to, there's supposed to be a debate somewhere here in Washington County with Rob Axton and Phil Lyman.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were following about the state GOP and kind of how much the party, and nobody usually pays attention to party politics, but everything's changing now where it's really important because you're seeing that the party isn't really sticking to what the platform is, whether it's protecting, women's rights, or they're just kind of falling a lot. You see certain positions just falling in with what the whatever to kind of appease the left out there. And this is kind of similar to what these, you want to call it a compromise or disagree better, however you want to phrase it. But what would happen when this happened with things like slavery, and people tried to compromise to that? It was actually the Democrat Party back then. And I think that we're in just a vicious cycle, and we have to say, no, this is a point. A lot of these points that are coming up are points that we're not going to compromise. And I'm interested how this debate's going to go today, if I can remember where it is or figure it out. I just messaged a few people. But anyways, but I'm curious because I've noticed that Lyman's brought up the point that Rob Axton's a nice guy, and I've heard him speak, and he is a nice guy. But his mentality is that, we have to take it, where the Republican has to take marching orders from the top down. And Lyman points out that, well, no, you need to listen to what's going on the actual real life grassroots, because that's where real people are. And I just wanted to say there's a paper I'm writing right now. And it just, when Phil Lyman was talking about this in one of his town halls, it reminded me about it, where, back in the early 20th century, when the technology with tabulators came out, punch card tabulator technology. It sounds so old right now, but this technology, nobody understood what it was, and nobody really paid much mind to it. But the government did, and those in kind of these administrative roles and big corporations, which would become like IBM, and FDR realized it because he realized he could start all these programs with this new technology, and the modern day war draft was able to be implemented because of these punch card tabulator technology. Nobody understood it very well. And I think that right now, because of technology where it is with AI and data governance, is one of many big issues, but it's one that I think delegates, or those influencing delegates, should really weigh in, what could happen if you're not really firm and you're constantly in a state of compromising, like, Neville Chamberlain. How much are we going to keep compromising, even at the Utah GOP level? And so Phil Lyman kind of brought this up in his town halls. And so I'm interested how that's going to go, because, I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but if you look at how, well, if you look at, like, if we were to go in a time machine back to when the tabulators were just coming out and getting steam from getting all this power from getting controlled by all these powerful government entities and corporations together jointly, you'll see that the common citizen had no real voice in how their data was being run through these machines. That's how the Nazi Germany could target so many little neighborhoods throughout Europe at a really quick pace. It just accelerated everything. And so that could really happen at a real catastrophic way in our lifetime even. And so if you think back then, what if the parents of Anne Frank had a voice in how that was being run? Or how, if there's a Holocaust survivor that doesn't live far from us here in southern Utah, Ben Lesser, and he's come and talked here. What if, his family could have been involved in how this was, and had a say in how this technology and their own personal data would be governed? what if, and so the Rob Axon would say, well, we have to defer to the experts who are above my pay grade kind of thing. Whereas Phil Lyman saying, you know what, we can actually listen to people on the ground, these parents, these common small business owners, which was Ben Lesser's family. So anyways, I'm just curious how this is going to go. Yes.
Are you leaning towards Phil Lyman, or have you made a decision yet? Like, what's going to kind of push you over the edge?
Well, I'm leaning towards Phil Lyman because, and full disclosure, where I've been following both of these for a while, and Rob Axon's been down here. Rob Axon came down and did a town hall with the California GOP, and she was the GOP chair actually when I was there. Chris Million, I'm going to get her name wrong. Million, I forget her name, but she was there, and one of the problems, and so I feel like Rod Axon has done a lot. A lot of times when I kind of checked in on him, he's going around the country a lot and working a lot with the GOP outside of Utah. Whereas I think I'd like to see the next leader, to really take more about what's going on internally with Utah. And that might be something worth doing. I think Phil Lyman went really out on a ledge, to say that, hey, this is Utah's land, and he's been pardoned by Trump. There's a video that I didn't actually see it until much later, so I only saw it fairly recently. But his he just goes over in that video with his families in there, and what they went through to just walk on, to access these lands that are in their community. And it's so silly and ridiculous. And I mean, I could come up with other adjectives there, but that they had to go through this, big fines, prison, he finally got a pardon by Donald J. Trump, President Trump. And so that should say a lot. And I think Phil Lyman should talk about that a whole lot more, because I actually didn't even know about it until kind of late in the game even. But I think he should talk about that. And I think we all have to keep that in mind, that we have to compromise is not, there's a time to compromise, but maybe, going back to the days, before with, tabulator, punch card tabulator technology, those weren't a good time to compromise, in hindsight, And so I think right now we're coming up on that. And we don't want these cycles to continue.
Yeah. Are you okay? I'm gonna have to wrap it up. We have our next call. Any closing thoughts?
No, that's it. I'm just gonna hopefully find out that if you're in Washington County, you should really try to go to the debate and listen. And it's good to just stay very structural on who can fix the system and not go, personality wise. We have two good people running, but again, I think one is going to take going to take orders from above, and one is going to really look into Utah from what I've seen so far. So I'm curious how this will all play out.
Okay. Thanks for calling in, Karen.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. I actually think that's a great point to end on that. We, just so everyone knows, we do have all the people running are good people. So it's just a question of what what our goal is here. And I think that's actually how I see it too, is that do you want someone who's going to listen to the grassroots, or do you want someone who's going to be more of a voice for the people that are in elected office? I tend to lean more towards the grassroots because I tend to be a part of that, but that's my personal preference. I think we have Olivia Dawn on, so let's see. If we do, Mr. Producer, you can put her through.
Yes, she's here. Go ahead, Olivia. Say hello to Goud.
Hi, Goud. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Olivia?
I am behaving, so as good as that can be.
Okay. Well, okay. So let me just start by saying this. I think I'm fascinated by this race because it's a rematch between the two of you, right? It's like a total SmackDown rematch. And so I want to know, why are you running to be the next secretary of the Utah GOP?
Absolutely. So as you said, this is a rematch. I had previously held this position, not this most recent term, but the term before that, when everyone was so excited that we had a grassroots team that was in place. We were all millennials, and it was a really exciting time to be able to perpetuate the positions of our party in a grander scale. We did not accomplish everything that we had hoped to, which I think is always the case when you're in an elected position. So I ran for re-election hoping to continue to do the work. And having a whole brand new team coming in, I felt that it was very important that we had some continuity in place. I was beat out by Stafford, who is the current secretary seeking re-election this term. She ran on a campaign of being incredibly tech savvy, wanting to build a database that was this masterful thing, and talked a lot about rebranding. Those things are important, but they're not necessarily the job of the secretary. And over the last 2 years, she has been in the position of secretary, but working more as a marketing director or consultant for the party. In fact, on the website up until about 2 or 3 days ago, she was listed as a consultant, not as the secretary, which I think is a little odd. And maybe not completely honest.
Interesting.
And it is interesting, and she has some control over the website. That's one of the things she ran on. That's one of the things that she's talking about now, is how much work she has personally put into the website. So for her to be listed as a consultant instead of a secretary seems a little lacking in complete honesty and transparency. And the reason why I decided to step in was because I saw the job of the secretary not being done. Like I said, she does great.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. Hold on.
Yeah.
Maybe you should tell us, like, what is the secretary supposed to do? I've actually wondered this myself, because I think it's interesting that the two competitive races here are the chair, which strikes me as like this. I understand why there's two people running for chair. The secretary position strikes me as much more administrative, and I think it's interesting that there's two people running for it. So what is the secretary supposed to do? Like, are we missing something about the power behind the secretary that's making it so it's a competitive race?
Absolutely. So the role of the secretary, as laid out in our bylaws, is to serve as the secretary for the convention, for state central committees, and for the executive committee, as well as their subsidiaries. On top of maintaining those attendance, votes, and minutes, so the records for those meetings, the secretary is also responsible for the management and organization of data. So any of the data lists that the party manages would be managed by the secretary, or if managed by someone else, still overseen by the secretary. So because of that specific aspect of it, I think that's why it ends up being a race that is sought out. It's been said numerous times that if you control the chair or the secretary, you control the party. Because if you have the chair, who is the head of the party, right, someone who represents the party in every facet, they're supposed to do the work of the state central committee. They're supposed to be essentially the head and the director doing the bidding of the governing body. But if the chair doesn't do the will of the body, there's things you can do, but it requires quite a lot of it's a high bar to be able to really do anything to hold the chair accountable if they're not doing what the state central committee bids them to do. Whereas with the secretary, since the secretary controls the data, and one of the things that I feel concerned about with our current secretary, she's talked a lot about building these systems to make our data safe and secure. And I don't know if you've watched any spy movies, but safe and secure are always the words that the government says before they strip you of your rights. And that's an accident. I think that there is an effort to hide our data. Our governing documents say that certain things should be public, and previously they were published on the website, or they were available upon request without question. But now there is a lot of people who have reached out to me saying, hey, as former secretary, if I were to ask for the delegate list, am I not entitled to it? And I would say, well, according to our governing documents, you are. And then they would wonder why Stafford had said numerous times, no, I'm not going to give it to you. This is, a delegate who's looking for the delegate list so they can communicate with other delegates. It's a public document. It's public data. They're supposed to have access, but they were being blocked from it. Candidates who told me that they did not receive data until the week before their election. One candidate in particular who last year was the winner at convention and did not received about 1/5 of all the party's data. And then the party is bragging on social media saying they have so much data, but then this candidate received only 1/5 of that. And so that's something where the secretary is supposed to oversee that data. And right now, the current secretary, our technology chair, who currently works with the AG's office, so there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, our chair, they are all working, they're claiming to be putting that data forward and to be providing all of this help. But really, it's all about kind of gatekeeping access. The only person running for vice chair has done a very good job of providing access through a difficult mechanism for people within Salt Lake County. And I believe that that's one of his goals in being an officer this term, is to kind of implement those same things. And I have a really hard time with our party lacking in transparency. So if I'm elected to secretary again, I was transparent in my last term, and I commit to everyone that I will be transparent this time. Things will be accessible, and we can hold people accountable.
Okay, so it sounds like on terms of data, you'll follow what the bylaws say and provide the data. What else should we expect from you going forward if you win? Like, what other changes should people expect?
Well, like I said, my biggest goal is accessibility, because without accessibility, we cannot have transparency. Without transparency, we can't hold people accountable. I have a couple pet projects that I would love to have happen if I have the time, but my first priority is to make sure that the secretary's job is being done. Our current secretary has been making sure that all of the marketing stuff is being done through other people. She's doing a lot of stuff on the back end, or at least claiming to. Some of I have no ill will towards the current secretary. We've been very friendly. We've worked really well together in the last 2 years. I've offered my help whenever I'm able. She just had a new baby, so I know what it's like to be a secretary with a brand new baby. That happened to me. We are both moms of very young kids, and so I know what that's like. My goal really is to just make sure that no matter what, accessibility is there. And then, like I said, there's some pet projects that I would love to have happen. I think we can absolutely do things to unite everyone who's a Republican under the platform, because being a Republican means that you align with that platform. So let's remind everyone of that. There's so much focus on the infighting in the party. I think we need to have more focus on what unites us, and then making sure that we hold people accountable to the things that unite us. Potentially doing a kind of scorecard for elected officials. Maybe having something in place where if someone who's in an elected office does not actually represent our platform, there is a procedure to make them aware that their standing in the party is in question. There's other states that have stripped the Republican name from people in elected office because they're not acting in alignment with the party's platform. And I think Utah needs to be doing the same thing. So that's something that I would love to have happen. And that's, one of the things that my sights are set to accomplish, but again, only after the job of the secretary is complete.
Okay. Now, so the chair position is competitive, right? You could end up with either Phil or Rob as the chair. Would you be able to work with either of them?
I have had a good working relationship with Rob for many years. I don't remember how many years ago it was now. Aaron Starks, while Derek Brown was chair of the party, Aaron Starks was the vice chair, and he stepped down. So there was a race that was held for the interim position of vice chair, and Rob Axon and myself ran for that position. He beat me by 4 votes. And we continued to have good relationship there. And I don't see myself being unable to work with him, but I will tell everyone, if you're going to vote for me, I hope you're voting for Phil Lyman, because that's the team I want to work with. I want to work with Phil. I like Rob, like I said. If elected, then I will work with whomever is in that position, regardless of personal opinions or differences in opinions. But my preference would be to work with Phil Lyman.
Okay. So you were secretary, I think it would have been from 21 to 23, right?
Yes.
Can you give us an example of something maybe that happened during the first term that you learned a lesson about, and you'll change how you operate if you win the second term? Just like a lesson learned kind of thing.
I love that question. I had the privilege of serving with Carson Jorgensen, Jordan Hess, and Mike Bird. And at our second State Central Committee meeting that was held out in the Nephi area in November of 2021, we had some bylaw proposals that were put forward, as is the case at every SCC meeting. And one of them did not meet the notice requirement, or not the notice, it did not meet the submission deadline requirement that was in our bylaws. And I was supposed to send out the agenda, and I communicated very clearly to the chair at the time that I did not feel right about noticing a bylaw proposal that had not been submitted in alignment with our bylaws. It's my belief that as officers, we are supposed to be that check and balance on each other. We are elected independent of each other, but to work together with each other in our specific roles. And I wanted to make it clear that we needed to follow our bylaws. I wasn't sure with the chair. He was new to the position, was new to serving within the party, and I didn't know if he was even fully aware of what that deadline was. So I communicated that with him in an officer chat with all 4 of us. There was a difference of opinion there, and we agreed that I would send a notice without that bylaw. He would then send an email forwarding that bylaw and explaining the confusion or the reason why it wasn't included in the initial thing. He sent that email out, but didn't give a whole lot of explanation, so there led to a little bit of a disagreement amongst SCC members as to whether or not I had acted appropriately. It's not the secretary's agenda, it's the chair's agenda, so that resulted in needing to have an explanation written and sent out. All of that being done, we then went to the body, and the SCC was able to make a vote. Would they use the agenda that included the bylaw proposal that was submitted in an untimely manner, or would they adhere to the bylaws and not hear that one bylaw proposal? They did end up hearing that bylaw proposal. That was the removal of something that people have been discussing, bylaw 8, which was a bylaw that was in place specifically to allow for the party to remove people who were running by signature gathering from being able to run as Republicans. And it was a little bit of a weird situation. But what I learned from that whole scenario was, one, it's very important to make sure that you have good rapport with the officers. What could I have done differently in this situation? It was late at night, but maybe having a phone call instead of doing things back and forth via text with the chair, so that way it was very clear we could both understand each other clearly. There was no misunderstandings or misinterpretations of what was read. Being able to then communicate more clearly with each other, having our disagreements not aired in front of the entire SCC, but hopefully being able to do them behind closed doors. And if they needed to be brought up at the SCC meeting, how to do that while still presenting a united front. Because I did have a lot of respect for the chair as were the other officers I was serving with. And it came across as though I did not want to work with them. And there were some people who took advantage of that and used that to kind of point me against them for a while afterwards. But that's not the case, since I think there's just ways in which that could have been communicated differently, maybe on all sides. But I would do my very best to try and communicate things privately and professionally, hopefully not to have to bring it to the SCC if at all possible.
Okay. Well, that's a good lesson. I'm sure communication is always really important in every organization. So I could totally see how trying to figure out the best way to communicate amongst a team that really, like, if you win, you get put in May 17th, right? And then you go for 2 years, but you guys haven't been working in those positions together before. So it's all like kind of a new team and trying to learn the best way to communicate. I could see that being a challenge for sure.
I definitely
it's
is.
Good to see that. Yeah. Okay. So where can people find you between now and the convention, like social media? And do you have any events or anything coming up?
Yes. You can find me on social media using Livie Dawn, LIVIEDAWN, on Instagram, X, Facebook, everywhere. It's Livie Dawn. You can email me at OD for Olivia Dawn, politic, POLITIC, @gmail.com. I'm doing my very best to reply to everyone, and I am sending emails out pretty regularly, so keep an eye out for those. Check your spam. If you haven't gotten a message from me in the last day or two, then sending them out about every other day. And then I do have some Zoom calls that I am going to be hosting. I have one tomorrow night at 7 p.m., one on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Monday, I'm going to do one at 2 p.m. to try and get those who want to do something in the middle of the day. And then on Wednesday of next week at 7 p.m., I'm going to do a Robert's Rules of Order training. I'm studying to be a parliamentarian, and we use parliamentary procedures in all of our operations within the party. So I want delegates and everyone to know how to participate using the correct rules. So I'm going to do some training on what those basic rules are. So at convention, people know how to raise a question appropriately and how to communicate correctly during the meetings that we will be participating in.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Hey, well, thanks for coming on, and good luck on May 17th.
Thank you so much for having me, Goud. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Okay. Well, I hope that was helpful to everybody. That's again, now I understand better why there's 2 people running for the secretary. That is actually a really important position. Great candidate. So we'll see. Now I think we should have more calls coming in. We'll wait for Mr. Producer to tell us. There was something that Kieran said that I thought was interesting about the data issue. This idea of you owning your own data, and maybe like how that impacted World War II and the Holocaust issues. I will say that I think we're already there. So, and meaning if you looked at COVID, I actually think a lot of that paranoia and hysteria was driven by people being on social media and then also news, and not understanding how to break free of what is a complete propaganda machine. I think you see some people breaking out of this now, but in the height of that, I remember it was very difficult to talk to people, and I could tell when I looked at like my Facebook feed at the time that seeing certain posts and stuff, it would change how I thought about issues. And so then you have to kind of consciously, when you're looking at social media, understand that there's an algorithm, and that companies, first of all, they don't share their algorithm with you, so you have no idea what's driving it, but they are collecting data about everything that you do, and they study how they can use your social media feed and everything, your advertising, everything that you're seeing, to change how you think about issues. And so Facebook, this is my theory on this, but Facebook, Amazon, these big tech companies, I assume X might have something similar, I don't know, but they can create a virtual version of you and then study how things impact your thinking. And they do it. They 100% do it. And I think COVID was a great example of how they can do it. I mean, think about it. You had people freaking out about a virus that has a 99.99% survivability rate. And that really is just most impactful to people that are already very sick, to the point where people were doing things like masking their children to go to school, causing all sorts of psychological trauma to children. I know it's hard for people to recognize sometimes, but your kids can't learn if they have a mask on. It's just not possible. It causes emotional problems. It makes it so they can't understand what people are saying. I know I have issues when I can't see people talking. It's hard for me to understand sometimes. And just think about all those issues that we caused for people based on fear and irrational fear about a virus that really didn't have a high death rate, and also had ways to treat it that they wouldn't let us do and that was purposeful. They purposefully withheld effective treatments because they wanted to push their vaccine. So, but that's something to think about, is like, this has already happened. They use your data today to impact how you think. And a lot of people, it works. Although I think more people are awake now than they were in 2020. And I'm happy about that. Very, very happy. Okay. While we wait for our next call, let me give you some updates. I saw, let's see here. What do I want to talk about next? Oh, here, we'll talk about Planned Parenthood. I don't know if everybody saw this, but Planned Parenthood is shutting down a couple of their clinics in Utah. So they're shutting down one in St. George and one in Logan. But unfortunately, that's not all of their clinics. Oh, it looks like we have another call. Okay, yeah, Mr. Producer, you can put Kay through. I'm kind of killing time in between calls. So, I will say, I'll show you this thing in a minute. We'll have the call, or maybe I'll show it to you real quick while we wait for Mr. Producer. So this is, I posted about this on X. So if you want kind of hot takes during the week, you should go on X and follow me. You'll get your best takes there. But, the University of Utah is actually giving a significant amount of money to Planned Parenthood every year. They're giving it to Planned Parenthood Association of Utah. Planned Parent, they gave them $111,805 this year. Okay, do we have Kay, Mr. Producer?
Yes, we do. Kay, go ahead. Say hello to God.
Okay. We'll come back to my Planned Parenthood thing for listening. Hey, Kay, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me to call in.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us, what are you thinking on I guess here's what I'm wondering. What are you looking for a new chair of the Utah Republican Party?
Well, I'll tell you right now that I feel like this is a really crucial time for our party, because either we have a party or we don't. And it seems to me that if we continue to go down the same route we are with the same people we are, we're going to get the same result. And what that result was that the delegates' voices were rendered absolutely meaningless. We all went to convention and we voted for Phil Lyman by 67.5% to be the nominee. And yet it was forced into a primary, which there's a debate going on whose fault it was. Was it, did Rob really send over the correct list, or if he did that, then Deidre decided to put out a counterfeit ballot and throw herself and Spencer Cox on there and other people too, like John Curtis. So who's in charge here? I mean, if that's really what happened, what I really feel like is that Rob Axson let the party down, because if he knew the rules, and let me tell you that those rules were printed in the convention literature that was handed out to all of us. If you get over 60%, you go to the general in November. And that didn't happen. We all know that didn't happen. So we can debate whose fault it is, but I think that either we have somebody who's going to fight for the party and say, hey, listen, folks, there are over 900,000 Republicans here in Utah. And either they start to listen to us, or we're going to find ourselves in a situation where there's no reason to be a delegate because all your work means nothing. If a party
if the state trumps the party, why would we have a party? You know, just let the state run it all. Just let the state pick the nominees. Let the state, pick the winners and losers. It's all the people that have the money and the power, and none of the grassroots are going to get through because they can't compete with that. But we're a representative form of government, and we have to absolutely fight for that. You know, I mean, either we have a Republican Party or we don't.
Okay. What about for the secretary position? Are you leaning towards anyone for that race?
I absolutely am rooting for Olivia Dawn, and I think she would do a fantastic job. She's proven that she can do the job. I think one of the things that really jumped out at me was at one of the debates where Olivia, said, hey, even though, this is supposed to be available to all of us, it hasn't been. So if we don't have the data, and I don't know if some people know this, it's my understanding that when Phil was, when he did win, he was only given a partial list of the voters. Why was he not provided with all of the data? Why was he not provided with the same information that anyone else would have been able to get if they were the nominee? It was like people were saying, well, it's not my job to give that to him. Or, it's like, I can't believe it. It's like, we have to have somebody who is in charge at saying, hey, here's the data. It's available to you. And you get all the data. You don't just get what we decide to send to you. We give you all the data. And so I thought she's going to make it a point of giving out, making sure that all that data is up to date, that it's available. And I think that's just crucial. And so I really do appreciate, what her comments were earlier today on the call. I think she did a great job.
Okay. Thank you for calling in, Kay.
Well, thank you so much, Goud. Appreciate it. Bye.
Yeah. Okay. I believe we have Tracy on the line now. We'll talk more about these leadership races. In the meantime, we got a comment from A.OTU saying, "Go Doge." Agreed. That's actually, we need a Doge in Utah, to be honest with you. I think we're the most corrupt state in the country. If we had a Doge, we could actually kind of dig into this, using technology to do it, and maybe be able to find a lot of the money laundering and stuff that goes on in this state. Okay, Mr. Producer, you want to put Tracy through?
Tracy is here. Go ahead, Tracy.
Hi, Goud. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Tracy? Do you want
Good.
Okay. So tell us, what are you thinking on these leadership races? The only ones that are competitive are the chair and the secretary. So I'd like to just talk about those. Like, give us your thoughts.
So I know a lot of people are asking, well, what could have Rob done? What could have Rob done different? If Rob would have joined in and supported Phil on his lawsuits, it would have strengthened that side and actually would have avoided the unlawful dismissal of Phil's petition to the Utah Supreme Court. Because under Utah code, when you're challenging or contesting election, the court cannot dismiss it and dismiss the proceeding, even if they think it it's not in the right form. And that Utah Supreme Court, Justice Durant, had no authority to dismiss it on his own. They didn't even allow for Cox to respond or Dieter to respond to his question of, hey, Utah Supreme Court, in 2016, you ruled that the signature gathering process did not apply to us, but they are continuing to apply it to the party. So which is it? That was essentially his question to the Utah Supreme Court right after the election in August, and it was August 1st. And there was no response. And what happened is, if you go look at the court docket, it says attorney called. There's no response. It just says attorney called. Well, who called? Which attorney? So I've even inquired to the Utah Supreme Court and said, what does that mean? And they said, well, that means they called in and got a copy of the documentation. And I'm like, bull crap, because we served him. We know all parties got served. So that is a lie. But if If Axon would have sided and done his job to defend the party and supported Phil, even in his legal actions, they wouldn't have dared do this. It would deter the corruption. He can't do that. And he won't do it in the beginning because you know why? He's a lobbyist. He earns his income from that. His wife is a lobbyist. He is a lobbyist. And people don't understand why having a lobbyist on an SCC or within the party will cloud your judgment. It will not let you stick up for the party because you don't want to tick off the people that pay you or that get your bills through and help your companies be successful and you get your bonuses from. That's the problem with having a lobbyist. I heard you talk.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I'm wondering on this, on the legal front question, just separate from that, I also saw a post where somebody said Rob asked to be able to see the signatures because, one of the big issues is whether Governor Cox actually got the requisite number of signatures to get on the GOP's primary ballot. I mean, I think the answer is he did not.
No,
but this post on Facebook that said, "Oh, he asked." He asked, and I thought to myself, well, if he had actually taken the party, done the grandma request, and then taken that grandma request to court to say, first of all, you're obligated to give us all of the signatures of public and private voters. So just so everyone knows, 3 categories of voters: public, private, withheld, and then fought about the withheld category. I think you would have had a really good fight. We didn't even have that, right?
Oh, no, he did everything possible to deter any questioning. If you questioned it and questioned the elections, he attacked you. Like, he tried to have me arrested because I was invited to an SEC meeting and was invited by the members to explain it. He did everything possible to prevent any proofs or to come out. Why would anybody want to elect that person again? That is beyond me. I think it's actually kind of snide that he even thinks that he should run again. He has let down this party and he's let down the state of Utah because they overthrew our government. It's a monarchy now. There is no representative form of government. It's a monarchy. It's who can pay the most. I heard you talking about Planned Parenthood, and I'll tell you what it is. It's money laundering. Planned Parenthood gives money to cops in indirect ways. And so what they do is our tax dollars fund the U of U, who then funds Planned Parenthood, who then funds their campaigns. It's money laundering. Utah is in a huge bad way. It's a quid pro quo kind of situation right now.
Yes. On that, I emailed the U and asked them about these Planned Parenthood donations. And I said, hey, because it's not just to Planned Parenthood of Utah. They also have donated to Planned Parenthood of the Greater Northwest, Planned Parenthood of Maramonte, I don't know what this is, Planned Parenthood of Illinois, my home state. I don't even know, what are we doing? So I asked, and the woman emailed me today and said, where'd this email go? There we go. She said, the University of Utah contracts with Planned Parenthood Association of Utah and national affiliates as research sites for data collection as part of clinical trials on pregnancy prevention. The research is reviewed and approved by the university's Institutional Review Board for Ethical Research and the Office of Grants and Contracts. What pregnancy prevention? I think, does that mean abortion? I have no idea what this is.
That blows my mind. It's abortion and probably birth control, like the morning after pill. That's probably what it is. You can, if you have unprotected sex, you think you could have gotten pregnant, you can take a morning after pill control and it'll abort it. If there was any birth or anything created.
Implantation, yeah.
Yeah, so it's this probably studying those kind of things, and that just blows my mind that Utah taxpayers would be okay with it, given the culture around here. I mean, they're family oriented. I worked for a company that was even part of the church, and they didn't believe in paying for birth control. That wasn't their belief. What happened? Why did this all change? Why is it okay now?
Yeah, it's crazy to me. We have a super majority Republican legislature, and they're allowing the U that is publicly funded to go and use our money to fund Planned Parenthood.
Exactly.
Like it's crazy. Nationally, there's a bunch of other ones on here too. Like crazy.
I know, and that's how they funnel it back. I think Cox's was funneled from Wyoming, so it's a way of hiding it, so it doesn't look like he's directly being funded by Planned Parenthood, but he is. And it's really sad that the understanding about the lobbying issue. I know Neil Sebring has a resolution to say you shouldn't be on the SEC if you're a lobbyist, or if you are already in a form of government, if you're a representative. I don't understand how people can't see the separation of powers and how it keeps it a better working. They're trying to spin that to say, oh, that means you don't want to work with the legislature. No, it actually allows the legislature to move on and actually do their job in representing. Why would you have like one good employee in 5 different positions? That's centralization of power. And so, like you see with Rob, who did not stand up for the party because he knows that's how he gets his money, is through lobbying. And if he does not make friends or challenges something, then a legislature might not like him. So he wants all the legislatures to like him, so they'll pass his bills that he's lobbying for. And it's just wrong. I can't believe he thinks it's even ethical to run as chair.
Okay. Any closing thoughts?
Now, if you're a state delegate, just show up and let's take our party back, because this is it. We have a monarchy that's going on. It's not us being representative. They're representing only the elite, only the Gail Millers or the Ryan Smith or the Eccles, or it's just all of the elite, the Kim Gardners of Gardner Institute, who do all the government contracts. I think I was reading Gail Miller's, all her companies, she makes like $8 billion off the state. That's insane.
Wow.
I wonder if she's a billionaire.
Okay, yeah. That's insane.
So,
okay. Well,
thanks for having me on, Goud.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. Okay, so yeah, if you're a state delegate, remember May 17th, you got to be there. You got to be there in the morning. It's at UVU. It should be a good time, I think. I actually am a state delegate. One of my, I'm a precinct chair, and one of my state delegates resigned because he decided he is I guess he didn't feel welcome in the party or something. He's like a little bit of a drama queen, if you want my personal opinion, but he's a Spencer Cox Republican. So I think that's like a trans Republican or something. Okay, so on to the Planned Parenthood piece here. I think we'll have more calls coming. If anybody wants to call in, feel free to. It's 385-899-2134. You are listening to the Goud Crowd, and I am your host, Goud. I think we might have another call. Yeah, you can put them through, Mr. Producer.
Goud, I have Monica. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, Monica, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Goud. How are you doing today?
Good. So tell us, what are you looking for in the next chair for the Utah Republican Party?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm looking for somebody with integrity and somebody who can really set the bar high when it comes to defending our Cox convention system and defending delegates. I know in my own race, that was kind of my first official. So I ran for state board, District 10 last year. And this is my first real official interaction with the state GOP as headed up by Rob Axon. So, I can't say I had any kind of personal experience until then. And then I was shocked. I was floored by how poorly the convention was run. And I think I look at my race. A lot of people might not know this, but my race is one of the early breakout races. I think there were 8 that morning before we went to the floor as an entire delegation body. And in my race, we were supposed to be voting, and we voted the whole day this way electronically. But we were supposed to be voting through this. I can't remember. Election Buddy, I think, was the name of the system. And as we went to go vote, I typed in my delegate number, as I was also a delegate, and to go to vote. And the first thing that popped up after I typed in my delegate number was, "Thank you for voting." And I hadn't voted. There were many concerns that were expressed before about electronic voting. Yeah, it was super nuts. In fact, not only had I not voted, a whole bunch of people in that room had the same thing happen to them. 14, 15 people that I knew of. There might have even been more. I don't know. But we all ended up out in the hallway. I sent you a link to it. I actually had my phone out, and I was recording at the time. And we go out to the table where the I guess helper person, whatever they call them, was out there. And the what?
The tech support. So, I don't know what else you would call it.
The tech support, sure. Right, the tech support. So the tech support's out in the hallway. They say, "Go talk to tech support." We go out there, and tech support responds. We're like, "How does it say thank you for voting when we haven't voted yet?" Tech support responds with, "Somebody else was also issued your same credential number, and they have already voted." Oh, well, that's not bothersome at all, is it?
Wow.
And that happened to at least the people that were out there. It happened to at least 15, like I said, 14, 15 people that I knew of. There might have been more. And this is what, this is the kind of thing where you watch it and you're like, wow, it's like a slow motion train wreck. And my race was super weird too. There were a lot of people in that room that shouldn't have been in that room. I was told by a delegate after the fact. And this was a first-time state delegate like myself at the time. She said, "I was really disappointed in going to first, registration was a nightmare. Second, we finally get in there. The voting is delayed. I think the voting was supposed to take place at 8 a.m. It was like 9:30 by the time we finally got around to voting. And then we have this glitch, right, where we're told we voted and we didn't. And that our credential was given to somebody else and they voted in our place. But on top of that, I had this delegate tell me that the second she walked into the room, there was electioneering happening. In other words, people were trying to get her to change her vote. So they tried to find out, well, who are you supporting? Oh, you're supporting Monica? Here's why you shouldn't. That's against the rules. There shouldn't be any electioneering going on where we have people actively trying to change the votes of the delegates. So we don't have a lot of respect for the delegates up at the state GOP level. This is a communication issue. If you're heading up the GOP, if you're Rob Axon, if you want the cleanest convention on the planet, then your communication to all your tech support, anybody who's helping out facilitate with these breakout sessions, with any of the voting, that needs to be communicated very clearly. Like, we do this clean and we do this right, and we do not allow electioneering. We let people vote in a way that can't be gamed. I was so disgusted with Election Buddy. and how many times I have to go. And I went to do that. I went to go vote, and I would get the glitch of, you've already voted. I have to jump through hoops to get re-credentialed, I think twice, something like that. It was not loud. So anyway, aside from just how poorly the convention was run, and I think this is, the communication begins at the top. That's a leadership issue. Your people, your priorities, you need to make sure you communicate as the party chair that, we respect the delegates. We go out of our way to make it easy to be a delegate. The delegates they're volunteers, like everybody else, but the system needs to revolve around them. This is what we should be doing, is bending backward, and so you add that to the fact that here we are, for those delegates like me who were at convention and they witnessed Cox's little temper tantrum, how he spat in the delegates' faces, metaphorically, not literally, but metaphorically, saying, you don't hate me because I don't hate enough, and I don't need you, I can go around you. He was just a baby. It was super embarrassing. That's our governor of the state, and he's curb stomping the caucus convention system and the delegates and the work they put in to vet these candidates. As a candidate myself, I don't know how many times I ended up with a booth next to Cox. I never saw him once. I never saw him in person once at any of these meet and greets that were put on by the various counties. And I had a tri-county race. So Salt Lake County, Utah County, and Tooele County. Those are some pretty large counties. Never once did I see him. I saw his lackeys come, his little paid lackeys come and set up his booth. But never once did I see him, and that tells his attitude at any rate. So here he does this, finger in the face to the delegates. It took the Utah State GOP 5 days to issue, not even, it was like this big, super weak sauce. They didn't even say Cox by name. They condemned, the first thing in their statement was, we condemn delegates. We condemn delegates who
Monica,
violent work.
I have to go to my next caller.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry, Goud. I'll let you go, but that's what kills me. We need a change, so bad. Let's, Phil Lyman is the guy. He's just the guy. We have a once-in-a-lifetime shot here to really shake things up and bring some accountability and clean house up the Utah GOP. I really hope other delegates, even if they're first time or whatever like me, can see it and have the courage to make that choice. We just need it. So thanks for letting me call in.
Thank you. Okay, we should have our next caller in a minute, or a few seconds. Those are good points. I mean, I think she kind of is saying what a few callers have said, which is it's a question of, do you want someone who represents the delegates as your chair, or do you want someone who represents elected officials and is more of a voice for them to the delegates? And so that seems to be the theme coming out from all the calls so far. All right, Mr. Producer, if we have our next person, you can put them through.
Goud,
Okay.
I have Steve.
Okay, welcome to the show, Steve.
How you doing, Goud? It's good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, we're talking about the leadership races in the state GOP. So I guess, are you leaning towards a particular candidate for chair?
Yes, I am. I'm absolutely not leaning, but full on throwing myself in the direction of Phil Lyman.
Okay.
For sure, 100%. We need new party leadership. Well, that's really quite simple for me. The fact of the matter is, our party nominated Phil Lyman and Trent Staggs and others as our party nominee, and I would refer to the GOP bylaws, actually, where it says, and I'm going to read this, a candidate for office that receives 60% or more of the votes cast at any point in the balloting process at the state nominating convention shall proceed to the general election. The general election. Utah GOP Constitution, Article 7, Section 2I. Where was our party when Bill Lyman was forced to go to a primary against Spencer Cox? Our party should have, by its very own laws, stepped up to the plate and ensured, and if that means a lawsuit, then so be it, that our candidate, and the GOP is a private organization, it should not be dictated to by the state, how they nominate their candidate. And that's exactly what happened. And the reality is, in my view, Phil Lyman should have had the R behind his name. And if Cox wanted to run as a write-in, then so be it. That's what should have happened. So that's why I don't like, the powers that be to circumnavigate and dictate to private organizations on what to do.
Okay. Are you leaning towards anyone for the secretary's race?
I think, quite honestly, I know both of them, and I think both of them would be good. Let's see, it's Horlocker and Palmieri, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I think they both would be. I think they both do a good job. And of course, the other two races, the vice chair and treasurer, are unopposed. So I guess we know who's going to win those.
Yeah, that's why I'm not asking about those, because you don't really have a choice. So, whatever.
Right. No, I mean, I suspect they won't even have a vote.
Right. Or it might be by acclamation.
It could be a short day, in contrast to the state nominating convention last year, where we didn't get out of there till after midnight. So I've actually had a lot of people ask me how long it's going to take. They were remembering that and didn't want to commit to being there for 18 hours. So I think it'll be a lot shorter this time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for calling in.
I mean, I was just going to say that I've talked to a lot of state delegates just calling around and trying to encourage people to show up, because historically these off-year, organizing conventions are not well attended. And I'd like to see a good showing of people. And quite honestly, that's brought up a lot. It just takes too long. And also, not only it takes too long, but what good is it to have delegates have the caucus system if it's just going to be overridden by the state? And so for those two reasons, I'm concerned that it's not going to be well attended. So we've actually been calling around just to encourage people to go. And I would add to that, we're not trying to pressure anybody to vote one way or the other. We're just saying, hey, show up and let your voice be heard.
Yes, exactly. And I think if you're just so people know, if you're not able to go or you don't want to go, you should contact your precinct chair and let them know so they can replace you, so that your precinct has representation at the state convention. This is actually really important to make sure that you and your neighbors are being represented by at least somebody. Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. I mean, you basically have three options the way I see it. You can show up and vote. You can not show up, and you can reach out, like you said, to your precinct chair and let somebody else represent you from your precinct. And you're exactly right. It has to be done through your precinct chair with someone the person she selects has to be from your precinct. So it can't just be random. And of course, you have the option to just say, no, I'm not going to show up, and no, I'm not going to step down. So that way, that's an option. You're not forced to do it. That would be an unfortunate situation, but it's just important that your voice be heard.
Hey, so Mr. Producer said, he wants me to ask you, what do you know about Chris Null? Because he's running for treasurer. Do you have any thoughts on that? Right, and then we have a minute and a half or so.
How much do we have?
A minute and a half.
A minute and a half?
Yeah.
Well, I was quite shocked, actually, to see that he was running. I mean, I know that I think Chris is a good guy. I mean, I don't agree with everything he did as the Salt Lake County GOP chair, but you're not going to agree with everyone. I think he is a big proponent of getting rid of SB 54, which a lot of us are against and see it as a big problem. So I think, that he'll continue to fight to get rid of that at the state level. I think it's really good, and I'm glad to see that his desire is to continue to serve. I thought maybe he worked so hard that he'd want a little bit of a break, but guess not.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for calling in, Steve. I appreciate it.
What are your thoughts? All right.
I have another interview next, but I'll give my thoughts later on in the show. Thanks for calling in. Okay, we should have next. We have Lady MAGA coming on, or Ryan, as you know him. I'm going to share we're going to talk about this. He put up a post on X that has caused quite the controversy. Is Ryan on? Oh, okay. Well, so here's the thing. Lady MAGA put up this post talking about, hold on, add to the stream. Someone is coming onto my show. It must be the producer. Okay, so Lady MAGA put up this post about gay couples adopting, specifically gay men versus lesbians. I think the issues are a little bit different. And this caused quite a controversy. I have it. It's up right now, so you can read it as we talk about it. And I think that he will come through. Mr. Producer, you can put him through. While we wait. Oh, there he is.
Ryan, go ahead.
Okay. Are you there? Hello? I'm not hearing him, Mr. Producer. Oh. Well, okay, while we wait for this, I'll just add a couple things here. He did say, for example, that he is opposed to gay men adopting, but he talks about that that I think a lot of this is based on many gay couples are not monogamous. So like he says in here, a monogamous gay couple is a total rarity. I recently met two gay couples who seemed nice. What were their plans that night? To go to underwear night at Triangles Club. And then he said they were not couples, they were slutty roommates. Horrifying, right? And then he talks about kind of the hookup culture in the gay community.
Goud, Ryan is here. I lost my connection for a second. Technology. Okay. Go ahead, Ryan. Hello.
Hello. Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to talk to you, Goud. You are a legend in the state of Utah. You have sacrificed everything for your belief. And I just want everybody who hears this to know that Goud is number one.
Oh, you're welcome to come on the show anytime. So anyway, let me. So Ryan, I have your post up that's caused a little bit of a stir. I wanted to kind of talk about a couple of things you said in here because I think it's interesting. So for example, on the adoption piece of this, are you opposed to a gay couple adopting if they are monogamous and have a more conservative lifestyle? So they're not participating in like circuit parties and partying and drugs and all this kind of stuff?
I don't think it's a black and white issue. I do believe that every child deserves a mother and a father, and that is the ideal. So I think we get into some murky waters when we try to claim that two dads or two moms is actually the equivalent and the same thing as having a mother and a father in the home. That being said, if a gay couple who is 100% monogamous and non-promiscuous, which is a rarity, a lot of what I posted got me in hot water because it ruffles feathers of the homosexual community, so to speak, that has fully normalized and accepted the concept of open relationships. 9 times out of 10, when you meet a nice gay couple and they say they've been together for 25 years, they have not been monogamous, and they are just, in fact, promiscuous roommates. So I do go after gay culture. I go after this pretending that gays are living some sort of good lifestyle that would be beneficial to adopt a child. So that's how I'll start off. Do I think it should be completely illegal? No, I don't. I think there need to be measures in place to really vet a couple, gay or straight, of course. And where I draw the line is surrogacy for homosexual couples. I am tired of seeing videos where a woman gives birth to a child that she has carried for 9 months, and that child is ripped from her body and given to a shirtless homosexual man live streaming on his Instagram as if that baby doesn't need to be held by a mother and breastfed by that mother. I think it's sick. I think it's twisted. That being said, if the same homosexual couple wanted to adopt, say, a 5-year-old, foster child who came from an abusive home and crackheads and nobody wants her, I do think her life can be better with a gay or lesbian couple. But I think that honest gays who want to save a life or who want to make the world better should adopt children who are already at risk. I am completely opposed to the narcissistic and selfish act of hiring a human incubator and then taking that baby from the mother.
Yeah, on that surrogacy point, I agree with you. I actually think a lot of times when you dig into it, that it's almost like they're creating these designer babies, and it's just really weird. And in my own view, it actually parallels yours on that. Like if a gay couple wants to have a child, and I'm not talking about lesbians, I'm talking about 2 men, but they should adopt an already like a child that's out there. There's tons of children that need to be adopted, and that's a much better option, I think, than surrogacy. So I see your point on that.
Oh, absolutely. But I will say the priority within any adoption agency would be to find a stable mother-father home first. And if they can't find that, then I do believe lesbian couples or gay couples should be on a second tier, so to speak. That also being said, I will not pretend that heterosexual couples who adopt are always going to be perfect. We see the foster system where kids are abused, but I think that any couple who will go through the process and the background checks and the social workers and the money to adopt a child, I think they're probably good people with good intentions. I just play devil's advocate, and I understand people's fears because we all saw that gay couple who was like pimping out their adopted children.
Yeah.
And so that you know, I understand people's fears. So I just say yes. You know, if we have a foster baby, or maybe a special needs baby, or some kid that just really needs a second chance, of course, a loving home with a monogamous, upstanding, background checked couple would be a positive thing. It would be a good thing. I will just never ever say that Dave Rubin and his partner with their designer baby is anywhere near the ideal of a mother and a father. Children need a masculine influence. They need a mother's influence. And a mother cannot give a child what a father gives the child. And a father cannot give the child what a mother can give the child. This is just a biological reality. And, you know, there's room for gay people in this world. We exist. You know, it's kind of a mystery, but we exist. Of course, we can lead good lives. We can make a difference. We can be part of society, and we cannot be a detriment to society, which overall, admittedly, the LGBTQ has been somewhat of a detriment to society. But for those of us who are not, we're good people, and we should have the right to exist. What we should not have the right to do is claim that the traditional Christian American family is not the backbone of our society that enables all of us, gay or straight, to flourish.
Okay. I thought in your post, your comments about monogamy were kind of interesting. And I'm wondering if you have noticed that, like, do you see more real monogamous couples in Utah than you see in other places? And this is what I've noticed. LDS parents tend to teach their children to wait until marriage to have sex. I feel like sometimes they don't push the same thing on their children that come out as gay. And I kind of wonder if Utah can provide a different model if those parents actually, if a child came out as gay, said, okay, that's fine, but you have to wait until marriage before you have sex, just like your heterosexual siblings. Do you think maybe Utah has the potential to have a different model?
Well, I think you make a very excellent point. Let's say a Mormon couple has a gay child. I think they should hold that gay child to the same standards of morality and abstinence until marriage as the ideal, just like they hold their heterosexual children to that ideal. And people say, oh, it's not realistic. Teenagers are going to have sex. They're going to be out there having sex. I'll tell you right now, I was a virgin until I was 22 years old. I made it all the way through high school. I made it all the way through my early 20s because sexuality simply was not my priority. I was busy with activities in high school. I did not need to focus on my sexuality. I focused on grades. I focused on scholarships. I focused on maintaining a 4.0. Like, I was very ambitious. And so it is absolutely possible to teach your child, whether they're gay or straight, that postponing sexual relations, at least until you're out of high school, is perfectly acceptable and realistic. I think that's a really, really good point because I know in my own family, there's a few of us who are gay. I didn't come out till I was 22, but the other ones in my family and the younger generation, they have chosen an immediate path of promiscuity, obnoxious behavior, and just let go completely of their traditional upbringing. And they have paid the consequences for this behavior with being cheated on, getting diseases, other things like that. So I think if Mormon people have a gay child, the gay child will appreciate that they're still included in the idea of being a moral person and never treating sexuality recreationally. The gay community is plagued with misery, with drug use, with disease, with suicide, and all of the above. And it's because the norm is to get on an app, meet up with a stranger, and risk your life. And it empties the soul every single time it happens. And that has to change within the culture until so that we can be taken seriously. And I get a lot of flack because I call out my own, so to speak, just like I have blacks to call out black crime and, per capita statistics. I think voices of trying to err on the side of caution and safety and morality and monogamy and self-discipline is really important, because a man's mastery of his mind and his body is the ultimate indication of dignity and being a contributor in society. If we give in to our animalistic desires like most gay people do, we're going to continue to be plagued by a lot of misery. And so I think a very, very small minority of gay people actually live a lifestyle that I could call acceptable and moral. And I would say they're around 5% of homosexuals, especially homosexual men.
Okay. Now, you also had some comments in here about kind of HIV rates in the gay community. And there has been an effort to minimize the impact of getting HIV, right? And also efforts to decriminalize purposely spreading HIV to others. However, I think some people would say that what you said about HIV would stigmatize people with HIV. How would you respond to that?
I think having HIV should be stigmatized. I think it should be something people fear. I think it should be a worst case scenario. I think it should be considered a life-threatening illness and not a big deal. That being said, someone with HIV should be treated with compassion and, logic and kindness and awareness. Totally. I don't think the person should be villainized, but I do think that the concept of contracting HIV should be a terrifying proposition to every living person. And within the gay community, the culture has minimized the contagion of HIV, and they promote unprotected sexual relations with drugs like PrEP. So I think anyone who knowingly shares HIV, if they're HIV positive and they give it to someone else, part of it is that person's fault for not using protection and not being aware that the person has HIV. But I think gay men as a whole should take a look in the mirror and say, why on every gay website, every gay magazine, is every other page an ad for a preventable disease? And I choose to essentially, I do remain celibate. I've been celibate for years. And the number one thing I fear is STDs or HIV. So for me, I want it to be stigmatized. I want it to be terrifying. I never want to get that. That being said, I've probably met dozens of people with HIV, and I think no less of them. I love them. But I don't know. Hopefully I don't sound too harsh or condemning, but that's just how I feel about it. And I recognize that my view is fairly harsh.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Well, you're amazing, God. I'm so grateful for all that you've done in our state, and please keep up the good work, and God bless you for everything you do.
Yeah. Hey, where can people find you?
They can just, if they really want the meat and potatoes where I get in trouble, they can go to X and just look up one word, Lady MAGA USA, or they can go to Facebook where it's a little more watered down, Lady MAGA USA, or YouTube, Lady MAGA USA, or Instagram, LM USA, like Lady MAGA USA letters, 1776. But join me on X. That's where we get into all the juicy fights.
Okay. Thanks for coming on. Okay. Well, that was cool. His viewpoint is definitely outside the kind of mainstream of how a lot of gays think. I know this because I'm part of this, but just really interesting insights. And Mr. Producer wants to say that Ryan is correct. It is, what do you say? It becomes trafficking to pay a woman as a surrogate. I agree with that. I actually think I saw there was a post online where in California they're really pushing gay couples to use surrogacy to have babies, and I don't know where this is coming from. It's really fascinating to see though, because it's like this was not a thing a few years ago, and now it's just. And I mean, there's some gay people that obviously did surrogacy. I have a friend that did it. The Treasury Secretary did it, but it was pretty rare. And now it seems like it's exploded and it's everywhere. I think there's even gays in Utah that I've seen that have used surrogates to have babies. So it's interesting to me how these things go in trends. Okay, so you are listening to KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. We're live on X, Rumble, YouTube, and our website, kmmu.org. Thanks for listening and calling into the Goud crowd. You can listen every Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. And you can subscribe, follow, and like our posts on your favorite platform. I will say that, like Ryan, I'm the most active on X, so you should follow me at Goud, Goud, the number 4 Utah. That's where you get my kind of spiciest takes on stuff, because it is a free speech platform, or the freest one out of all of them. And so I tend to use it the most. I don't really like support. I feel like supporting Facebook is a mistake after what they did during COVID, right? When they were labeling people's posts that were true as being propaganda or fake. So really, people should stop supporting them. Okay. So anyway, I thought those were good. There was kind of something interesting in there. I'll just mention, when I lived in Dallas, I was actually part of the Big Brothers program. And I was the big brother for a young man. I guess he was like 11 or something. And his moms, or his adoptive mothers, were lesbians. And they told me once, and I thought this was interesting, that they actually they actually had their kids go into the Big Brothers program to make sure they got contact with and had like a mentor of the opposite sex. They're kind of cognizant of the fact that as 2 women, they couldn't provide maybe the masculine energy or masculine kind of viewpoints on stuff that a boy would need. So it was kind of cool. Like I feel like I know some gay parents in Utah. I actually think, from what I've seen, they do a great job with their kids. They're very protective of them, like parents should be. A lot of them are actually big fighters against the trans agenda, which is kind of cool to see. I wish I'd actually see more heterosexual parents in Utah do that. So there's a lot to do, but I've talked about this before. There does seem to be some fear out there, and so we don't have as many speaking up about these issues as I think we should. I hope that today's show is helpful to delegates that are going out there and trying to figure out who to vote for in at least the 2 competitive leadership elections. So you have the chair of the state Republican Party and then the secretary. Next week, like I said, we'll have on, hopefully, we'll have Stafford on. So she's also running for the secretary position. And so it'll be good to hear from her. And she's the incumbent right now. So just so that the timeline's clear, Olivia Dawn was the secretary from 21 to 23. Stafford has been the secretary from 23 to 25 now, and then she's running for re-elections, and Olivia's running against her. So you get one or the other. Olivia's kind of doing the Trump skip a term thing, which is kind of cool, or either one. So let's hear from Stafford, see what's different, what she'll do in the next 2 years, maybe any lessons that she's learned by being secretary for the past 2 years, and then hopefully we'll get Phil and Rob on. So I've actually emailed everyone that's running, even in the non-competitive seats, and invited them on. So hopefully we'll get also Chris and Melanie as well next week. Okay, now let me take you to some of the other things I want to talk about in the last few minutes we have. So I played you the video of Brady. Let me play that one more time, because that's kind of a good one. And then here we go. Okay. So this is like I was saying, this is Brady. I want to give you guys a sense of why Utah is so weird. But
so Troy Williams is the director of Equality Utah, and we have a great relation.
Hold on.
Great relationship. We work.
Oh, there we go. It's hard for me to do this on this little button.
So Troy Williams is the director of Equality Utah, and we have a great relationship. We work well together. There's a lot of mutual respect, and we're trying to find our path through.
Okay.
So Troy Williams is the director of Equality Utah.
Like I said earlier, I just think that's bizarre because Troy Williams is a left-wing individual who runs a left-wing group whose essential goal is to defeat Republicans in office. They represent fringe views. For example, they support men and women's locker rooms. They support girls and boys sports. They support keeping a transgender woman, so a man, living with your daughters in the dormitories at Utah State University. Why is a Republican meeting with them at all? Oh, my producer said, tell you Equality Utah's. Equality Utah is a left-wing, anti-family, pro-trans agenda group in Utah. They raise a lot of money from rich individuals and corporations to promote agendas that are completely in opposition to what I would say are Utah values, which is actually what Ryan just talked about. The idea of these couples that are monogamous and have lots of children. They are there to help undermine those families and to push a radical agenda that actually is aimed at destroying your children's minds and bodies. One of their biggest efforts has been to promote the trans agenda in Utah. And what I mean by that is they are the ones that support putting pornographic and demented books in your children's schools to teach your children that they can change their sex, which is a lie. It's a complete and utter lie. They're the ones that push men and women's bathrooms. They support, like I just said, men and women's locker rooms. They support girls playing sports or boys playing sports with your daughters. Mentally ill men in college who are pretending to be women living with your daughters in their dorm rooms. And by the way, it's every left-wing cause. They support They support mail ballots with 100% mail-in voting, and you're not allowed to question it or they'll attack you. They support the current leadership they support our governor. They're fully in support of him. In fact, Troy Williams traveled around the country with Governor Cox on his Disagree Better tour. I wonder if they shared a hotel room. I have no idea, but frankly, they seem extremely close. And in fact, Governor Cox has a lot of really close gay friends, which is a little bit weird to me. But that group is not one that supports Republicans. They actually raise money specifically to defeat Republicans in office, and especially the ones that are conservative. So why would a Republican legislator go and meet with Troy Williams? And on top of that, they use this Business Equality Leader program to enforce their viewpoints on the employees of those companies. That's what happened to me at Lucid Software. Troy Williams contacted the head of HR and he contacted the general counsel and started complaining about me, saying, "Oh, he's attacking the trans community." All I was doing was saying, Sue Robbins is a man. He's a boy named Sue. It's a man who transitioned from, I wish I had a picture. I mean, he obviously looks like a man, but he transitioned. Oh, my producer wants me to read. The opinions expressed are strictly those of our hosts and do not reflect the opinions of KMMU. True, those are my opinions. But the point being, he goes around contacting people's employers. I'm sure I'm not the only one that this has happened to. And he had one of his board members, this woman named Sunny Washington, contact the CEO of Lucid Software to complain about me and to get me fired. So they take their 501c3, they're not paying income taxes, and people are able to donate to them and deduct their donations on their tax returns. And then they turn around and they abuse their powers to go after conservatives who have jobs at companies that have signed up for their business equality leader program, which essentially is a way for them. It's like communism. They use these programs to then enforce their speech and thought standards on all the employees. So if you don't actually follow all of their left-wing lunatic crap, they'll try to get you fired. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that this happened to. I'm probably just the one that Lucid accidentally told that he had sent an email. Because if they hadn't told me that, I wouldn't have known. And so why would a Republican legislator be meeting with them? Like, what do you hope to accomplish? They hate you. Equality Utah hates your guts. They hate your values. They hate your constituents. They would like to trans all their kids. And so people understand. I'll close on this. Being trans is very different than being gay. And to Ryan's point, if you have a gay child, you can actually hold them to the same standard as your other children, right? It's just, what changes is who they will end up being with. So, if you have a boy, he turns out to be gay, he's gonna be with a man instead of a woman. Got it. But you could tell him, you have to be abstinent until marriage, right? Or whatever, wherever you want to be abstinent until. I want you to keep going to church. I don't want you to stop. I need you to be spiritually fulfilled. And I want you to go to heaven at the end, whatever that looks like. So, but that'll happen if parents, I think, put pressure on their children to do that. The trans thing is very different, though. It's actually undermining a truth, and that is that you cannot change your sex, no matter what you do. And what you find is that when this happens, when a child comes out, whatever, because they're pushed by their parents or society as quote unquote trans, you'll see that marriages fall apart, families stop going to church, the families get torn apart because there's all sorts of disagreements about whether this is a real thing. That's the reason why they push the trans agenda so hard, is because they're trying to destroy your family. And Equality Utah is at the forefront of that in our state. So I would urge all of you, call someone like Brady Brammer, ask him, why are you meeting with Troy Williams? Why would you bother with that? He is opposed to our values. He's opposed to me keeping my family safe from the disgusting agenda that he is trying to push on my children. With that, thank you for listening. This has been the Goud Crowd, and we will see you next week. Again, we're on Mondays, every Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. So see you later. Thank you.